very beautiful morning it is. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Whatever happened to Ayo's partner? Ayo, now you can appreciate my predicament a little more. Huh? Reminding me that my partner is on loan. See how it feels? Oh, well. Good morning. I know that book will be back soon. But good morning and welcome from Abuja. I'm Maokpe Ogun Yusuf.
You know, see how you're cranking the engine so slowly. Just, you know, those engines you just crank gently, just once, twice, and just, you know, locomotive just gradually before you pick up steam at the
You know, it's putting out some exhaust, some black exhaust before it starts.
Oh, you are coming back to Lagos, Chamberlain, to meet me here.
That's what happens in this country. We've been there before, so we know how those cars can be, how embarrassing and challenging they can be. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain, Uso, but you know what? Different strokes for different folks because different people woke up with different expectations here today. And the thing is, I mean, I caught up with a lot of young people, some young people this morning, and goodness, they were just expecting news from yesterday to filter in today that they, guess what, will go back to school. But it wasn't the case. In fact, some of them didn't even know that meeting was deadlocked. All they had was that, oh, okay, so ASUU has called up the strike, and when are we supposed to go back? I thought, oh, but it was almost difficult to let them know that, well, actually that meeting is deadlocked. So the strike continues, and goodness, you could just see the exasperation and frustration, you know, amongst them. And that's how it really is, because sometimes you just wonder when you see those headlines or you hear somebody else say it, it may not hit home unless you're directly or indirectly involved in some way with that kind of scenario. So, well, much as they did hear that ASUU says the question of UTAS and IPs has been put to rest, the government will implement the UTAS. Their demands, meeting up with Professor Nimi Briggs' committee, there was light at the end of the tunnel.
Indeed.
But now,
I mean, how could they have fed us with that amount of optimism? And then, you know, at the end of the day, just dash it. I don't know.
It's crazy.
But if you ask me, I think that we need to speak with both parties again as to what exactly has gone wrong this time around. Because it does appear to me that I mean, ASUU is not exactly excited going on this strike. Yeah. It's not like as if they wish to go on strike. It's just that they really want government to be committed. And if the optimism, even in the professor's voice when he granted that interview, was anything to go by, it meant that indeed they were making some progress. So I think that even they wanted the strike to be called off as soon as possible. It was not a question of them digging in their heels. Yeah. If I'm to read just what happened, I mean, a lot of time would have passed, and I'm not sure, you know, it's difficult to say what happened at the meeting, and we were not there. In fact, to even get a location for where that meeting was being held, you know, was one hell of a job, because
they were tight-lipped.
Exactly. It seemed that they were trying to be very coded up as to where they were holding that particular meeting, or to keep journalists out of the picture. I don't know, and for what reason. Because even then, even when we're there, we're not able to get into the meeting. It is whatever it is they tell us. It's just that whenever it is they come out of the meeting, you are able to read from body language, from how people look, whether, you know, something fruitful went down or whether there is light at the end of the tunnel. Well, information is out. If the meeting was deadlocked, then, you know, it's certainly not looking good. And this is how many days now? This is since February 14.
183?
The dates that they chose to go on that strike, I know that a lot of young people would not forget in a hurry.
First one in strike in February 14.
February 14. So,
it was like a joke.
Yes.
And then I thought, on this day?
Yes, and look at where we are now. This is August. This is way past August 14. We're approaching the end of August, almost. Let me just double check that.
That's tough for a lot of those young people.
August 17.
When they hear that, look, it's going to be included in the 2023 budget, you thought, okay, what else is there to be sorted if they've given us that much information? But there you go. It's deadlocked, sadly.
Well, we'll certainly be keeping our ears to the ground and finding how we can get a hold of the stakeholders to find out why this has happened this time around. And this is in spite of the president's directive that everything that needs to be done should be done to ensure that that ASUU calls off its strike? So we need to know, is this from government officials or is this from the part of ASUU? Is it that what government is offering is not satisfactory? What precisely has gone wrong this time around? Is it that government is rejecting the report of its own committee? What precisely is the issue this time around? Ayo, were you able to keep your ears to the ground and get any extra information which we might have missed?
Well, one thing that I can tell you, if I keep my ears any closer to the ground than you already did, trust me, it'll be full of dust right now. But one thing that can be that we can say for ourselves is, and Marco, I'd like to begin, with this proverb in Southwest Nigeria that the children you did not teach or train are going to sell the houses you build. And it's just one of the several implications that we're not even looking at already. Now, it's not just about the students now, and it's not just about today. And look at all the things that we have neglected over the years, and look at what we're suffering as a result and how far it has brought us. We neglected the refineries for so many decades. See where we are right now. We're struggling with energy to power the economy. We have abandoned our health sectors when the pandemic hit. We ran into emergency, and it seems as that's the only way we react to things. We have progressively abandoned education, and this is where we are. Guess what? It is because of the abandonment of education over the years that we have the kind of people we have at various leadership levels, at the local government level, state houses of assembly level, gubernatorial level, Senate and House of Reps level. And some people will wonder, why should we have certain kinds of people that we have? It's what we sold. So in another 5, 10, 15 years from now, what are the implications of this present strike? And let me even ask, who is benefiting from this fracas? Who is benefiting from this unrest, from this unsteady educational system that we have on our hands? Is it certain individuals' interests that are being served? Or is it the interest of the nation that is being jeopardized? Who is benefiting? Who is happy that students, young people, are being left at home, literally placed in the devil's workshop because they don't have anything to do? Who is benefiting? Maybe if we find out who is benefiting, who is not able to sit down with ASUU or with any agency or any association that is supposed to do whatever it is that they need to do to ensure that they do not go on strike and jeopardize the future of the country, maybe if we can find the people who are benefiting from this situation, maybe then we can begin to find a way to solve the problem on a permanent and sustainable basis. Until then, let's switch to the papers and see what the papers are saying this morning. This Nigeria is our first pick today, and it's also talking about that on its front page. Another strike looming, or is it indefinite strike over labor issues? That's the kicker of the story. Nationwide blackout looms. Find that story on page 4. And the riders, aggrieved electricity workers threaten to shut down power stations as ex-PHCN staff picket TCN headquarters in Abuja over unpaid entitlements. Well, there's been a letter from both the CCN and the Office of the Minister. Is that strong enough to stem this strike? I guess we'll wait and see. Hopefully we'll have a conversation around that this morning. Right under the picture, in the middle, you have, again, FG ASUU meeting ends in deadlock. The story is on page 16 of the paper today. Right beside the nameplate, 1 out of 10 children dies before 5th birthday. That should trouble anyone. What is that saying? That means 10% of children die. In Nigeria, before they hit age 5. Staggering, scary news. That's this Nigeria this morning.
News Direct is next one here today. Proposed blackout. What a dangerous kicker that is. FG suspends promotion interview. Silent on ex-PHCN staff benefits. Any power disruption will have dire consequences on already fragile economy, ascribed to Fadipe. FG should avoid grounding dwindling economy. Hello, Joe. So, I think it speaks to the issues are pretty clear, I reckon. So, while speaking about the economy, CBN raises interest rates on savings deposits to, look at that, 4.2%. That's News Direct this morning.
Well, let's take a look at what The Guardian is saying this morning, and they have this one. Look at this. Wealthy Nigerians, middle-class youths in web of Naira shorting. That's a lead story, always focusing on the economy. Country at risk of all-time high money laundering. That's all-time high money laundering. So, look at that. That's part of the riders. Their request for dollar-denominated accounts spikes. Fund managers feast on desperation for dollar assets. Outlaw domiciliary accounts. Go after black money. That's someone advising here on page 9 of the paper. When you outlaw those things, what you just find is that people will go under. And when it goes under, it becomes even more dangerous. At least right now, the CBN is able to keep tabs on what is happening with domiciliary accounts. I think it's made it a bit more difficult. So, for instance, if you deposit into a domiciliary account, you can only withdraw. You cannot do any transfer unless the money was transferred into the domiciliary account. So there are some measures here and there. You cannot invest in Eurobonds anymore. You cannot, there are few regulations being put in place, but
sometimes you can't even withdraw more than $100 if you travel to do
Yes, that's if you're doing that with your card.
Yeah.
If you're doing that with your card. Because people used to go to Benin Republic and withdraw money from there.
Even to pay some transactions, I think. Somebody was talking about that, and I thought, really?
Yeah, there are a few rules that have been put in place because they didn't want a situation whereby people would just travel to neighboring countries.
Ferry the money through that route, right?
And then, they withdraw the money from there and then they have money on their hands, especially if you're taking official exchange rate. If you're getting the Naira at the official exchange rate, there is a wide disparity between the official exchange rate and the parallel market rate. So what people used to do is that they will claim they're traveling somewhere, get the official exchange rate, travel to maybe nearby Ghana or Benin Republic, withdraw it and come back into the system. So there were ways that people were thinking. It was a very, when you think about some things, you just be like, who comes up with this type of schemes?
But some also thought that CBN needed to be a lot more on the ball, keeping the eye on the ball, in the sense that those whom they had intervention funds and they gave them those exchange rates at the official rates, who in turn promised to then make the dollar available to the markets at those same official rates, were not doing it. They were profiteering. So those are areas too that
Chairman, I think at the end of the day, I think what really needs to happen is that we need to make investing in production more profitable than just speculating against the Naira or speculating on dollars.
That's a basic thing.
That's what we need to do. Because if it's more profitable to go into production, you see the profit accruing. And people who do that are making far much money than the people who are speculating, who take no risk whatsoever. And just holding dollars makes you richer than those who are saving in Naira. I think that this will certainly, be reduced to the barest minimum. But that's what The Guardian is focusing on this morning. That's the lead story. Wealthy Nigerians, middle class, youths in web of Naira shorting. So every single class almost is involved in this. You also have a bit of politics here. Wike's meeting with Obi after botched one with Atiku scam raises dust It's a page 9 read. We also have this 1,700 abandoned NDDC projects in Bayelsa. Unacceptable, says Diri. It's a page 29 read for you. A number of other stories at the bottom of the paper, but this one jumps out at me. Oh, well, two of them actually. Total blackout imminent today, despite NERC tariff market contract. It's a page 4 read. And your apology accepted, Archbishop tells Lalong, page 30. Let's leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
Well, talking about respite the other time, I don't know how much respite or optimistic this one can be on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper today. And what do you have? Most certainly not the best of times for the aviation sector. When was the last time it was a good time? No respite for operators as aviation fuel hits 903 naira. I'm guessing that's per litre, of course. Nigerians shun air travel over high cost of tickets. Lagos-Abuja return flight now 200,000 naira. Abuja-Kano 160,000 naira. Experts predict higher fares. Airlines cut flights months after National Assembly resolution not yet implemented. Question that just keeps buzzing in your head is, what is going on? But that's what you have as lead of the paper this morning. Well, there's under the picture you see disquieting Kwankwaso's NNPP as Shekarau decides on exit tomorrow. What's that about? Well, we talked about the transfer window the other time. Is this another one? Still not closed, I guess. The details you'll find on the inside pages of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Back to you guys.
Well, take a look at leadership next. As reconciliation process drags, Wike hits PDP again, says party towing path of failure. Warns against Abuja politicians getting... I'll go again. Warns against Abuja politicians polarizing party, asks Atiku to scrutinize supporters' electoral value. Nigerians are getting tired of the situation. Shekarau set to abandon Kwankwaso's NNPP to meet Tinubu. So, there you go. I guess they keep doing their thing. And then just beneath that, you see economy, insecurity, others top agenda as governors meet today. And when you look at all of those soaring prices, I think the question of legacy will come up, because the thing with all these prices is when they hit the roof like that, you just need to go down memory lane and ask yourselves, how many times did they come back to the real and not artificial costs?
In Nigeria, they always say whatever goes up never comes down.
So it defies the laws, the natural laws that you thought would not be defied. So.
Even when the things that made them go up, but
sometimes,
you also see the pleasant surprises that, when prices go up. Sometimes, occasionally, they could come down.
Very few times, isn't it?
But I know one thing that doesn't come down: transport.
That's just the thing, and that is the main thing for a lot of people.
That is a major thing. That's a major thing.
Their lives revolve around all of this, moving around, so planning based on certain things. And when you can't plan based on certain things, it throws every other plan you've got out of the roof. Well, that's leadership this morning, anyways.
And they have this one for you on the front page of New Telegraph. Insecurity will affect 2023 polls, says Dambazo. Urges adequate security around border polling units. Says military overstretched, funding inadequate, true federalism, state police, power devolution to shape poll. Says Nigeria has 60,000 abandoned projects, estimated at 12 trillion naira. Okay, this is not the first time we've heard this. And he's certainly speaking from experience. He served in the military. He was former Minister of Interior. So he definitely knows what he's talking about when he says there should be adequate security around border polling units. You also see this again. Governors meet on economy, security, Buhari appoints Rear Admiral Musa, retired coordinator of Counter-Terrorism Agency. Page 3 and 8 will give you all of the details around security and the economy and 2023 polls, which New Telegraph has this morning. They also have that story on strike for you. Electricity workers adamant despite federal government's plea. Pickets TCN, it's on page 27. Brain drain, Nigeria risks importing doctors in future. That's according to NMA, and this is something that needs to be taken seriously. I think in just, was it 2 weeks ago, we had a report from Katsina talking about how they just had a little over 100 doctors to serve the entire state with less than 30 consultants for the whole state, and that's Katsina, which is, you know, at least trying to take a look at what is happening within its own borders. What are the other, you know, states doing about that? Are they also taking account of what is happening within their various states? I don't know. But look at this. COVID-19, federal government confirmed release of 119 billion naira to battle pandemic. Was that in the past? Or is this for the future?
Because when you think of it, people expected this kind of narratives, but we didn't see as much.
Well, don't let anyone pull out your pages 3 and 8 in the New Telegraph. That's where the story is. You have to take a look at it. Ease of doing business. Federal government proposes 315 billion naira World Bank intervention for states as Oshibajo urges governors to work harder for program to succeed. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph. Of course, they have a number of other stories, plenty more on the front page, as a matter of fact. Look at this one, for instance, E-naira, CBN intensifies sensitization amid banks' apathy. I think that, you know, this came on the back of Nigeria's mad rush for cryptocurrency, and maybe the federal government felt if we had our own, maybe people would be willing to bet on it. Whatever happened to cryptocurrency, though?
It's going on.
Did you invest in it at the time?
No, not really. Just trying to watch and see what transpires. But, you know, banks have always been, from what we've seen, they've always been apathetical towards some of these policies coming through from the CBN, and that's why you have intervention fund here. They have the special fund here, and you thought, so what happened to the DMBs? Why are they not the ones driving all of this? How long can the central bank continue driving all of these policies? But if it's working for them,
I think that people just didn't quite understand it. I mean, E-naira, for instance, I know that my bank constantly advertised to say that, look, it's the same thing. In fact, they created a segment for it on internet banking. If you wanted to buy E-naira, your 1 naira was equivalent to the E-naira or something like that. If you wanted to convert, I'm like, I'm already online. I'm banking online. I'm not exactly seeing the physical cash. What exactly is the difference between this cash, which I don't know, have been electronically sent to my account? I'm about to electronically send it to another account. Why do I need another wallet for E-naira? What does that mean? But people said, you know, you don't have to understand it for you to be a part of it. After all, how much understanding do you have of technology before you invested in it?
Well, there are different things that affected it. There was perception, there was timing, because people thought when they clamped down on crypto, which lots of young people were coming, and then they came up with this. And then people tried to download it to see when the buzz was up there. It wasn't there as such, and so.
But it worked on it, from what we understand. So it's a lot better.
What did they do eventually to ensure that people had it? You know, so, Ayo.
Well, you guys talking about E-naira or cryptocurrency? Well, the first question a number of people might want to ask is, hey, the same government, the level of distrust? I don't know. I'll keep my E-naira. I keep my naira, and I'll keep my crypto for those who have it, even though the government has outlawed it. Lead story of the Daily Times newspaper. This is what you have. Nigeria will save 2 trillion naira from malaria elimination, according to the president. Appoints Dangote chairman of 16-member council to eradicate disease. We've been going about this for decades, guys. Decades, many decades. My mind goes back to the rollback malaria program of, was it the 80s? And we're still talking about the same thing now. And I don't know, but hey, what kind of, what's the quantum of private sector participation that is going to come in to help eliminate or eradicate malaria from Nigeria. 40 countries, according to our report, that we put on News at 10 yesterday, says that, 40 countries have already taken it out of their countries. How is it difficult for us? But hey, we'll find out in the course of time. Pick up a copy of the Daily Times newspaper. Brain drain. Now, this is interesting. Right under the nameplate, Nigeria may import doctors in future. NMA warns. Okay, anyway, that's what you have on the front page of the Daily Times. The details continue on the inside pages, and a number of other stories you'll find quite interesting, including this one. Telcos kick against hike on advert promo fees by NCC. Find out what that means on the inside pages of the Daily Times newspaper. And that's a look at the papers. We return after this break, after some messages, to take on the first issue for the day. So please stay with us.
Singing solidarity songs, members of the National Union of Electricity Employees occupy every available space in front of the Transmission Company of Nigeria to press home their demands. Amidst the songs, the chairman of the FCT chapter of the union speaks on the reason for the peaceful protest.
The board has jettisoned our condition of service. We have a condition of service that was signed by both management and the union. And that condition of service must stand. Yes. We are here to say the condition of service must stand.
Identifying with the workers, a member of the Central Executive Committee of the union enumerates their grievances.
We are surprised that after the appointment of the board, the first gift they want to give to the staff of TCN is to jettison our process and procedure, to now capture promotion in their own hand.
The workers also lament the failure of the federal government to pay the entitlement of former staff of the defunct Power Holding Company of Nigeria since December 2019.
Privatization was supposed to take place 2012. Fortunately, it didn't take place. It took place by 2013. There is 16 months abstract that, government supposed to pay. As I'm talking to you today, that 16 months has not been paid.
In a reaction to the protest, the Minister of State for Power appeals to the union to sheath their sword. A statement signed by the minister reads, "The Ministry of Power takes cognizance of your complaints therein and is committed to proffering solutions that will be acceptable to all parties concerned. May we appeal to your great union to allow us 2 weeks from date of this letter to address the issues and come up with proposals towards acceptable resolution of all issues." End of quote. The union had issued a 14-day ultimatum to the management of TCN on May the 18th, 2022, threatening to down tools if its complaints were not resolved. Following the expiration of the ultimatum, the union, in a notice signed by its general secretary, asked all members to stop work from Wednesday, August the 17th, 2022.
Thank you for staying with us. Let's have this conversation right quick with Joe Ajero, who is Deputy President of NLC and General Secretary, National Union of Electricity Employees. He joins us virtually this morning. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Ajero. Well, the natural question to ask you, first of all, would be, is the strike still going to happen?
Thank you very much. Well, bearing anything this morning, the strike will commence today. Bearing any last-minute miracle, the strike will commence today.
But two letters emanated from the authorities, over TCN. The MD released the letter, and the Minister of State for Power also validated that letter, saying that they needed 2 weeks for TCN to do, to just sheath their swords for a bit, and then they can address these things.
Well, let me tell you the crux of the matter. The issues now are beyond TCN and even the Minister of State. There are three main issues, among others. One is the promotion issue, which the TCN can handle with the board. We don't have problem with that. The second one is the issue of the balance of entitlement of PSCN workers. And an agreement was reached in this direction by 2019. And the Minister of State, who has written to us now, signed that same agreement, and he had between 2019 to 2022 to have addressed it. And that agreement gave the TCN branch of the market operator the marching order to pay. And between 2019 to date, they didn't pay. And the last issue, anyway, is the issue that came up from a circular from the head of service that contravened the Power Sector Act. And we have been writing the head of service in the last 6 months for clarification on the context of his or her circular, and we didn't even receive any acknowledgement of our letters. So those are the three issues. The Minister of State can't speak for the head of service in this regard, never. But the Minister of State, up to this moment, should equally excuse himself if he signed that agreement on behalf of government and failed to implement it. So these are the issues. When you write President Buhari, unless any of the ministers or people under him write you back on his behalf, their competence in handling such issues may be in doubt.
So you're saying essentially that it's only the president that can, intervene in this matter to give any assurance to the NUEE. But then you also said that, the three issues are speaking to three different authorities altogether. The first one.
I want you to get me clearly that I said that the TCN and its board can handle the promotion issue clearly.
Yeah.
I actually said that the issue of the agreement signed in 2019 that TCN, that is market operator under TCN, was asked to pay, was signed on behalf of government by the Minister of State. And that 3 years after, the Minister of State is asking for 2 weeks. I actually say that the circular by the head of service can only be addressed by the head of service or addressed by the head of service on the intervention of probably the Minister of Labor, who has a statutory duty to intervene on such matter.
So we have an agreement. There are three different authorities that need to address each of these issues. But just a quick one on the interview thing. I remember that back in time, maybe in the 70s or even in the 80s, there were usually promotional exams before officers in the civil service are promoted. So what exactly is the issue with this promotional exam? Because the assumption, some would say, is to return the civil service back to what they will call the glory days, when promotion was on merit and not just at the whim of anyone.
Well, the first caveat is that, well, TCN is not a civil service, the first instance. The second one, it could be a parastatal or a public sector, but not a civil service. The second point here that we need to underline is, as we talk now, promotions are on. It's not critically on the basis of promotion. Since last week or last 2 weeks, promotion has been on, and there was no time promotion interviews have been stopped in TCN or in the then power sector. Never. The issue is not issue of promotion. The issue is that when you get to principal manager to assistant general manager, the positions are closed in. Now, if you have 200 people go for promotion interview there, you may not have 2 vacancies or 3 or 10. And now, from inception of the organization, those areas are by appointment, either to general manager or by ED or by those maybe who are covering duty. That's the line we are talking of now. People have reached their level, and then in most instances, it's even the ministry that appoints a general manager, or the board that appoints a general manager or whatever. And now that has taken place, promotion interviews have taken place, and people have continued their business. And this is in the career part. And automatically, the board said everybody should be, if you are going to call everybody for promotion interview, there should be vacancy, there should be a place for them. And we have to sit down, to jointly, review what we have jointly signed. It's not for the whims and caprices of any of the parties, either the level of the management of TCN. And there should be management function and board function. Board can't just come on board and say what you had with the union is null and void, and they nullify it. Those are the issues we are trying to explain. And this board you are seeing is given the mandate to improve the power, the power situation in Nigeria. That's the marching order they were given. And they are busy, battling with condition of service or whatever, which will be due for review probably by December, and they can come up with all this.
Well, you also made it clear that you have written various letters over the months, the weeks and months gone past to address each of these issues by the different authorities. So when you say only a miracle can stave off this strike, what do you mean? What kind of intervention are you expecting, since there are 3 authorities to address the 3 different issues that are the crux of the matter?
Well, I don't know the intervention they want to do. Ordinarily, in matters like this, meetings are held or letters are, sent to the people complaining that this is the situation. We wrote about 3 letters for clarification. Our letters didn't start with ultimatum. Of course, we were too big for that. We understand more than that. And when it was not forthcoming, we gave the first ultimatum, which expired. This ultimatum we are trying to carry out now has expired in the last 1 month, and we have been appealing. We have met with TCN, Transmission Company Nigeria, and they told us it's beyond their powers, clearly, in 2 separate meetings. And we pleaded with them, please, can you help us reach out to the people who is within their powers? And up to now, nothing has happened. So whatever intervention, there is no intervention could come through responding to the issues raised if you don't want to see the face of the people concerned, or inviting the people for a meeting, or making time out to address the issues, and it ends there, just at the level of grievances, not dispute.
Isn't that the reason the minister asked for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks, to address the issues?
The Minister of State cannot address the issue raised by the head of service. Cannot, without sounding immodest. The ones that he addressed 3 years ago, after 7 years of those issues, those issues have been pending, there was a strike action. The Speaker of the House of Rep intervened personally with other ministers of labor and power at the National Assembly. That matter was resolved, and they agreed to implement within 2-3 months. And that is the issue that is coming up now, 3 years after. We can't be deceived again. What manner of 2 weeks is he talking about?
I mean, since you've talked about the fact that letters have been written by, the union over the months and all of that, I'm just wondering if there wasn't any communication, at least someone must have received the letter and certified that they received the letter. From the feelers that you get from each of the authorities involved in this situation, what kind of feelers did you get before you released the report yesterday, or was just dead silence from the three quarters?
Well, in all fairness to the Ministry of Labour, somebody sent me a text while we were at the ILO conference in Geneva that the minister said we are in receipt of your letter and we'll look into it. Text message, I didn't know the person up to this moment. I assumed that to be the minister's position. That between May and June. I kept quiet. We sent another ultimatum and we copied the Minister of Labour. We write all the agencies, SGF, even the security agencies. We sent another letter of ultimatum after a long time. I got another text from that same source that the minister said that, can you forward a copy of the letter from the office of the head of service? I forwarded it. That was, and the ultimatum expired over a month ago. Up to this moment, no comment, nothing, no correspondence, no meeting, nothing. We can't wait indefinitely, please.
Well, Comrade Ajero, you say that the Minister of State's letter cannot address issues concerning the head of service and the Ministry of Labor. So if that were the case, does it mean that the letter and the appeal from the ministry counts for nothing? Because Labor has to make a point to those other two agencies concerned.
Well, we had already responded to the letter by the Minister of State Power, and he has received it and acknowledged it, where we stated our views on the contents of his letter. That one is not in doubt, and nobody here that understands, power relations will tell you that when a head of service issues a circular, a Minister of State, will call for 2 weeks. Or when a Minister of State signs agreement by himself, after 3 years, he will call for 2 weeks. Those bases are not, and we have a substantive minister in that ministry, who is there, and why the agreement is signed before has not been implemented is not known to us. And all the letters we have been writing have been addressed to the Minister of Power, the senior minister in that sector. And nothing has happened. And as these things are happening up to today, hello?
Do you mind sharing with us what your response was to the minister?
Well, in the response, we thanked him so well for, doing the letter to us, and asked him that ordinarily he should excuse himself, having been the author of the agreement in December 2019, none of which has been implemented, and that ordinarily he should not be the person asking for 2 weeks. If in the first place 7 years was not enough, and there was a strike action, which it attracted the attention of the National Assembly, and after 3 years again, it's not addressed. We equally urged him, to tell us whether he can address issues raised by the minister, raised by the head of service of the Federation on this issue, or whether he has the mandate of the head of service to address this issue on her or his behalf. And he didn't get back to us up to this month. That's our last correspondence.
Because, I mean, I'm not sure he's responded to you yet because the communication just happened. Has any response come through from the ministry, by the way?
No further response apart from that. But the Minister of Labour
would it have been a bad idea if, for instance, you or Labour decides, all right, well, the ministry has written, Nigerians may not have been aware of our correspondence over time. But now that we've given this notice, we've picketed the offices, Nigerians are aware that this is looming. Now that they've written, in good faith, let us sheath our swords, go listen to the ministry, and then make our point so that Nigerians and everyone can indeed see that, look, we're doing what we can to stave off any further challenges on the people.
Well, yeah, you talked about good faith, and he that equally goes to equity goes with clean hands. You can't talk of good faith and probably maintaining equity when you have a soiled hand, soiled back hand. You have an agreement for 3 years that is in your hand, apparently because you are the Minister of State, and the substantive minister there who should have acted on that didn't. And as we talk now, the substantive minister is equally keeping mute on this issue. And you are asked again to do a letter.
All right, I think we're lost, comrade. We'll just see how we can get that back. But it's a matter that when these kind of issues come up, because we're just about to get across to him concerning the concerns that some Nigerians have on this particular matter. We're not sure if we'll have him back at the moment, but when he does, the thing is, Nigerians thought, look, why is the union going on this strike now when they say that, look, in some areas, in a lot of areas, they see a lot more stability in power generation over the last few weeks, contrary to what they've seen before. And they thought, these are conditions of service for union workers. And with due respect to them, they think, are they going on strike on personal condition of service so that every other Nigerian suffers because of this?
And you know, Chairman, those were the questions that were bordering my mind as to, they obviously know the power that they wield in the power sector. And when we talk about power figuratively and also in terms of, you know, electronically speaking, or, you know, they know what power they wield and how that is a live wire of the Nigerian economy. We're certainly not where we ought to be with power supply. People, you know, businesses are still suffering under the weight of that. We cannot count how many times the national grid has gone under this year, and that largely is where the TCN is responsible. But these sort of cases, I mean, where you have a sector, because the TCN, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, is the only one still solely in the hands of the federal government. It makes a case for decentralization of power, because the whole of the country cannot be held at the mercy of workers, I mean, of a group of workers. That certainly is. Yes, there are welfare issues, and I believe that those welfare issues can be tackled. Yes, in many instances, government itself, food drags, the bureaucracy is such a behemoth that it takes forever and ever. I mean, you just heard him talk about how the TCN is involved, the head of service is involved, the ministry is involved. It takes forever for these different parts to synchronize in some instances, and workers are suffering as a result of that. But it cannot be further justification to impose further suffering on all the other parts of the country. So there are many questions to be answered in that regard as to whether that's what they really want at the end of the day, because they're saying nothing short of a miracle will stop the strike today.
And that's not the kind of, again, with due respect to all of them and their concerns, not the kind of posturing that Nigerians want to see, or the person on the other side wants to see coming into a negotiation table, much as, I mean, both of them have got challenges why they allowed it fester up until this point. But many also will have loved to see issues on that agenda or demand, such as expand the transmission capacity such that we can transmit a lot more than we are currently transmitting. Because if we are able to generate 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 megawatts, can we transmit it and not have it stranded? Have we gotten to that stage yet? So what happens to those kind of issues if they're going to go on strike for or protest for those kind of issues? But in the meantime, you heard the man. He says the strike will go on today. But what I'd love to just get from him to find out, look, if something happens today, if those agencies or those other ministries give them a call, can they suspend this? Because it will have huge implications on the economy, which I'm not sure is what labor or electricity workers want. Because at the end of the day, it comes back to see How does he make them look? Ayo.
It's a catch-22 if you ask me, Chamberlain and Maokwe. I don't know where we're going with this, but we know it's bad enough already. Should it ever get any worse than this, that's something that we don't want. But hey, okay, I understand that we have Mr. Ajero back. Well, just one quick question that my colleagues raised earlier, if you can speak to it very, very quickly. You are aware of the importance of electricity. You know the implication of TCN going on strike. Have you considered the hardship, the untold hardship it's going to have on every Nigerian, well, most Nigerians, especially the most vulnerable, small businesses, people who can't afford the high cost of fuel and all of that? What exactly are the thoughts that's on your mind? I understand that we've lost the audio, we can't take him. I really wish we could take that so that we can take that as well. Joe Ajero is Deputy President, Nigeria Labour Congress, and he's also General Secretary, National Union of Electricity Employees. He joined us virtually from Lagos. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Ajero. More issues to come after this break. Please stay with us.
All right, welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, as you've seen in that welcoming slide, those two gentlemen joining us today. Mr. Samuel Adeniran is the Statistician General of the Federation and Chief Executive Officer of the National Bureau of Statistics, that's the NBS. And then sitting beside him is Mr. Peter Hawkins, is the UNICEF representative in Nigeria. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
Let me start with you, Mr. Adeniran. Yeah, I know we've seen that report, but if you could just give us a further background in terms of what the core essence is, the objectives of why you ventured into this.
Thank you very much. The Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey is a global ASUU survey that countries across the world conducted every 4 years to assess the situation of women and children in the country. We have done 5 rounds of the mix, and this one that we launched yesterday was the 6th round. In that survey, we have various indicators that address women's situation, children's situation, and recently about children between age of 5 to 17 years. These are done for government to have data to assess the performance in the achievement of sustainable development goals, as well as other national agenda that we have. The survey also is an avenue or a platform for not only the NBS, but the entire Nigerian statistical system to be able to adopt statistically standard practice in the conduct of our surveys. In that survey as well, we have opportunity to improve on the methodology that we use for our ASUU surveys, as well as increase the quality that we embedded into various ASUU surveys that we conduct in the country. So in a nutshell, it is a platform for NBS to improve on the conduct of our surveys, as well as building capacity of the various components of the Nigerian statistical system. That is what is in need for us as NBS.
But Mr. Hawkins, in addition to perhaps whatever you might also want to add to it, if you could equally talk about what would you consider as some of the key highlights worthy of note in this particular report?
I think it's important to say, one, that it gives national figures as well as state figures. It's disaggregated down to state by state, region by region, so you can look at the variations, look at what is Nigeria progressing, and is the state progressing, yes or no, where it is not. I think some of the highlights, if you want to look at some of the good news is around immunization, perhaps, from 50% to 57%, which with the last mix, it was down to 34% to 57%. That's a massive increase. If you look at some of the areas of major concern, would be around education, especially the out-of-school children, in primary school children, where 1 in 4 are not going to school, are out of school, 10.22 million. But I think it also is a fascinating reading for everybody to look at, especially the social economists. It looks at foundational learning, it looks at social behaviors amongst the young people, amongst the middle-aged people, and amongst the older generation. And it really does look into some of the psyche of what Nigeria has become. I think the biggest concern, as I alluded to earlier on, is about the disparities at state level. Some states are progressing exceptionally well, some states are lagging very much behind in most areas.
And this is a really useful document, especially as Nigeria goes towards the political year. These are the issues that should, because these are the issues that Nigerians face on a daily basis. For instance, one of the indices which our correspondent captured that had improved was breastfeeding. There has to be questions as to what exactly is enabling breastfeeding figures improve. Is it that states are coming up with policies that are more mother-friendly? I mean, is it that there is better education in that regard? And these are figures that actually go to the heart of, Nigerians. I want to ask you, for you, what states would you say you have noticed the most marked improvement since the last poll was done? And are there any surprises here for you?
I think it's less about improvement, it's more about status quo for the high-achieving ones, say Lagos. It's roughly staying the same. And remember, since the last one, we've had COVID as well. So any status quo is actually a gain in many ways. But I think you've picked on one very important topic around nutrition and breastfeeding, which the two are hand in hand. The indicators around nutrition, especially in areas in the north, are very worrying, around wasting, around stunting. If we take stunting, for example, one of the big areas that helps address stunting is breastfeeding. So the breastfeeding for exclusive breastfeeding has increased substantially, 10 percentage points if I remember correctly. But for breastfeeding within 1 hour has dropped. And that would be an indicator about institutionalized birth and rural births. So having skilled attendants at rural births or births in the homestead. One of the problems there is skilled birth attendance has remained static at 50%. It hasn't increased or decreased, and the population has increased substantially. So you're seeing advancements in one side, but in certain areas, especially the rural areas or the non-highly urbanized areas or the poorer areas of the country, where you're seeing degradation, and we need to really address that disparity urgently.
If I'm correct, the last time a poll of this type was done, was it in 2016?
That's correct.
2016. So we've already passed the 4-year mark. I mean, this is almost 6 years after before this one now is being done. It's a good thing to see that the NBS is very much involved in this. We've seen that the NBS is now more and more involved with polls. Well, you've always been involved, surveys that have international dimension and, are useful in measuring a few things. For instance, drug abuse, etc. Are you feeling any pressure from, did you come under any pressure whatsoever while this poll was going away? Would you say that states, I don't know if they were aware that you were carrying out this survey, were they curious to really know where they stood in terms of, some of the indicators which you covered in this particular survey? Yeah,
so the National Bureau of Statistics is the main implementer of this multiple indicator cluster survey, as well as the other survey that you mentioned, like the drug use and health survey, the corruption survey. As far as official statistics is concerned in the country, it is the mandate of the National Bureau of Statistics either to conduct it on our own or we conduct it in collaboration with other agencies of government or international partner like the UNICEF for this mix. So one thing that we enjoy at the National Bureau of Statistics is that for all our releases and our survey results, there is no pressure from government to one, tamper with what the result is saying. I can give that credit to the present government that we have. The two ministers that are supervising us, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, as well as the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, never intervene in what we do. When we release our data, they see it just as any other person in the country has seen it. And from the state, one thing that we do is that for ownership and for the credibility of the result, right from planning stage, we always involve state stakeholders. The State Statistician General will be there. All directors from relevant departments at the state level will be involved right from when we start, so that the transparency will be there, the credibility will be there, and they also at their own state level monitor the conduct of the survey, so that the NBS will not be seen as either when the result comes out, they are not aware or they don't even know when the survey was conducted. But in terms of the result.
So the acceptability too should also be there. I want to imagine that the Nigeria Governors Forum will be very interested in results like this, in surveys like this. Do you give them like a peek into the results before you eventually go public by launching the report?
So what we do is when we have the data analyzed and processed, so we call all relevant stakeholders for the validation of that result. Among them are ministry, department, agencies, because for the survey we have two bodies, governing bodies that oversee the conduct of the survey. We have the National Steering Committee that comprises CEOs and head of government agencies, as well as state government. Then we have technical committee that also look into the methodology and the strategy that we use for the survey. So the Nigerian Governors Forum, to the extent, is just to participate at the validation of the result after we have processed it and have the first draft of the result.
If I could just follow up
just to let them see that the result is ready, will soon be launched, but not to tamper with it.
No, not to tamper with it, but I imagine, I mean, their peer review mechanism, they should be able to take on the issues.
And say, yes. But so where there are outliers, so why is this happening like this? And
or
then
the other way.
Able to, or the other way, and be able to explain the situation.
But speaking about methodology, as the implementer of this particular report, as you also alluded to earlier, this survey represents 39,000 households, is it?
Yes.
So how significant is it? Because I know you might have heard that, wait a minute, 39,000 households? Because if you're going to be implementing that, was it a question of what? How significant is it? Why 39? Couldn't have been a lot higher than that?
So what we do in NBS is to do sample survey. We are not population commission that do census. So we take a sample from the population to represent the entire geographical area where that sample is taken. There is methodology of doing that in terms of sampling in such a way that you know some variables, some factors that you consider in taking your sample. And when you take that sample, when you hear the statistician saying the sample or the result is given with 95% confidence interval, it means that you have taken that sample in a way that if you take another sample, as you said, you are still going to get the same result that still estimate for that population. if you take different sample at 95 times, all those samples, whether 45, whether 39, will still give you the same result and estimate as you have it in 39. So the 39,000 households covered has stages before we arrive at that. First, we take sample of enumeration areas, which we got from Population Commission in each of the states of the Federation. Then from those enumeration areas, we conducted a complete household listing in them. And then from those households that were listed, we also take a sample. So going through this multi-stage cluster selection gives us a robust sample that at the end of the day, the result getting from those enumeration areas accumulated to the state give us an estimate of what is happening in the entire state. That is the beauty of taking sample.
You know, when you initially spoke about the states, performance in the states, lots of people thought, oh, okay, some are doing good, others can do better. Incidentally, the governors will be meeting today, so hopefully, who knows if this will be one of the reasons will be considered on the agenda, as it were. So what did you find? Why is it that some are doing good and others not as much? What can they do to improve?
In actual fact, later today, we're launching the Primary Healthcare Challenge Fund with all the governors. Oh, okay. And this will come up, nice. Most certainly, because it's a very good baseline to show and to compare one state with another and to see why one state is doing better than the other and what are some of the challenges that the states who are doing less well could come across. I think, you know, the disparity is a very big issue in Nigeria across the board. There are some states where you've got immunization rates of 84%. Other states where 1 in 4 children are not being immunized. Wow. It really is very stark. And when you look across, it's not only states, but you also look across the variation in richness and poorness, education standards. The variation is quite amazing. Gender, I think it was something like 79% of women have access to telephones, 88% of men have access to telephones. That 10 percentage points is really significant when it comes down to people. But, you know, your wealth, your gender, your geographical disparities, and your educational disparities are becoming more and more stark here in Nigeria.
All right. Has security got anything to do with it? Because we also know that in certain states have felt in recent times a security crunch. Maybe that's not the word to use, but a security challenge. And some states have been harder hit than some other states. Would you say that you also saw the effect of that in some of the surveys that were conducted?
It's difficult to see a direct result as a result of conflict or insecurity, but there's no question around, say, for example, nutrition, where stunting in some states is up to 42, 43%, and those states happen to have insecurity as one of the prime underlying features. It could be a problem. But I think there are bigger problems. I mean, there's about wealth, there's about poverty, there's about gender, there's about educational disparities, and other such things which actually have a more profound effect on this.
Well, I know my colleague Ayo would like to get some questions in. Ayo, over to you now.
Thank you, Markwe. Let me begin with you, Mr. Adeniro. The last report, I mean, the last report said 1 in 10 children, you know, lose their lives. This one, however, says 1 in 8. For those who wonder, it's not really as significant as one would have expected. So the natural question, taken from some of the things that Mr. Hawkins just said, education, economic stability, or economic capacity, and the rest of them. What, in your opinion, are the gaps that needed to be filled? What kind of collaborations were not available that made it difficult for us to do a little more significantly than we did in this report? Because I'm very sure that's what you would probably have expected, at least 1 in 3, not up to 1 in 8.
All right, thank you. I think one way to improve on the result that we have, definitely there is significant improvement from 2016 to 2022, but as you said, we can do better. One of the things that we can do to get more improvement is to look at the result coming from our rural areas. If you look at the result, you can see that generally urban, those that are in urban areas have better results than what we have in our rural area. So whatever intervention that we are putting in place should be targeted more to the rural areas. We need to penetrate the rural areas. Also for head of household that are headed by somebody with higher education, those households also perform better than where the head of household is illiterate or not having adequate education, because this gives them access to some of the facilities that make their health to improve, that make their education level to improve, and have consequent impact on the children raised in those households. So the issue of education has to be worked on, and you can see the situation that we have. If you look at the result, the impact or the reduction in some of the indicators on education, which means you have to work more on in the area of education than we have now. The out-of-school children, the story is not good in that area. Also, when you look at literacy level, literacy level is also no much improvement in that aspect. So these are things that government at the state level as well as federal also needs to look at and work on in order for us to have improvement more than what we experience. And at the same time, the issue of inequality also need to be addressed, because when you look at the wealth quintile of all the indicators, you relate it to wealth quintile, you see that also that are well-to-do have much more better indicators than those that fall within the poor quintile.
Perhaps generally,
so also reduce
Mr. Adeniro,
the inequality.
Yeah. Perhaps that also speaks to two things which are related. You spoke about the fact that, you know, the report, when it's released, it goes to the ministries, departments, and agencies, and I'm assuming it will go from the federal government MDAs to state government MDAs, who would or should dissipate them to their various areas. So it speaks to the inadequate collaboration in that regard, plus the fact that the local government system will probably have done a lot more work in terms of raising awareness with the people, because no matter what words are put into these reports, at the end of the day, it's about execution, getting things done, getting foot soldiers into the various rural communities, as you and Mr. Hawkins have said. So in terms of getting the message down to the grassroots, would you say that we did enough just giving awareness about what we need to do in order to improve the figures more exponentially?
Thank you. So, Ayo, for the National Bureau of Statistics, what is important to us is that the result is out. We try from our own side to ensure that we cascade the launch to the state and to the zonal levels, so that people in the programmers, the implementers, we have this result handy for them to now strategize and improve on the way they approach their intervention. So it's not for NBS to go to the state to start looking at how they are going to improve on the education, on the nutrition.
Well, sometimes, Mr. Adeniro, if you forgive me, sometimes
is left for the programmers. But
yes,
we will take the results to them, make it available to them, so that they'll be able to use it for their programs.
Well, sometimes when some of these agencies receive the reports, it just looks like, okay, it's just one of those things, one of those reports for the shelves. We hope they'll do something with this one. But let me ask Mr. Hawkins very quickly. Well, part of what you said at the launch, Mr. Hawkins, was that there's been some good progress, and we should celebrate that. We still have a long way to go toward ensuring the well-being of children in Nigeria. So in terms of providing a guide, which you said that this report is supposed to do for the federal and state governments as they plan their budgets, what are the things you are hoping would be used or utilized? How do you hope that this report will be useful in the planning of budgets by federal and state governments?
I hope it'll be integral, and it lends itself to your last question about trying to get it down to state level so that people see it and use it. But I think also, as I said yesterday, it's also about the Nigerian people, them knowing what is happening, what are the indicators, what are some of the disparities between their state and other states, and that information, getting it out into the public through the media, which is why we're here today, is so critical that they can hold their governors, they can hold their government to account for the services that they are receiving. And secondly, I think it's all around, as you said, about investment. How can governors or the federal government invest better, get a better return for their investment? And things like immunization, nutrition, basic education, these are not costly things. And the budget is there to be able to respond to these needs. It's about that execution. And what these figures do is hold the line ministries to account for that execution and for the use of those funds.
Gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about birth registration as we wind down on this one, because I see that since the MPC, as the Population Commission, was established, there's been some conflicting reports on the level of completeness of birth registration in the country. I see that the reports of live birth, death, and stillbirth registration in Nigeria between 1994 and 2007, commissioned by the MPC, by the way, claims that the birth registration was 0.01% in 1994, and then improved to 23.93% in 2007. But then, in the MIC's report, I also see that there was some improvement in birth registration completeness between 2007 and 2011, 31.5% and 41.5% in 2007 and 11, in that order, except in the Northeast. So, for this session, this particular one, what is it with the figures with the Northeast?
So the total figure is now 57%, which is great, but it's a long way from universal birth registration, which is what Nigeria is trying to achieve. So for the Northeast, it is about access to populations, it's about mobile populations, especially displaced populations and so on. So there's a lot of work being done. I think in the last quarter, it was something in the region of 200,000 children have been registered at birth. So that we can ensure that the displacement and conflict or insecurity that has affected birth registration is no longer a factor in that. And then there's a lot of work being done about it in the Northeast, as indeed for the rest of the country. Because one of the biggest problems with birth registration, and for me it's one of the most important issues, because it gives a child a unique identity, gives a child it becomes a statistic, a reality, and it has a very big impact on immunization, enrollment in schools, and so on and so forth, if a child is actually registered. But it's to build the digital platform so that the digitalization of birth registration becomes automatic, whether in a rural village, in an urban hospital, a maternity ward, or wherever. that child is always registered at birth, so they become a unique entity in this great country.
So, Adeniran, could you speak to why that disparity, though, between NPC's figures and that of MIC's?
I didn't see the disparity between the two figures. With what you just roll out now, there has been improvement from 1999 to 2007, and up to 2016, where we have 46%, and now we have 57% birth registration. So there has been the same pattern of improvement from the 1999 to date. So if you look at it, that's what I tell you about having confidence interval in figures. If you have 27% for a particular indicator, and another indicator is telling you 28%, if you look at the confidence interval and the two of them overlap, it's telling you that even though this figure, this particular indicator is 27%, and this other data is telling you 28%, if their confidence interval overlap, it means the result, the difference is not significant to say that there is wide discrepancy, as you said. So if you look at their figures, the figure from National Population Commission and what the multiple indicator cluster result is given, the confidence interval is within the same, the two of them overlap, which means we are saying the same thing in terms of the population, because it's an estimate.
I'm just wondering, it's a question of now that we have love, what are we going to do with it? Now that this information has come out, are you going to be breaking it further in a way that Nigerians can understand and make sense of it, especially as elections are coming? Because they really need to, people have been saying that, you know, a lot of things are affecting our everyday lives, and we need to be able to make significant changes and ask those who seek to lead us how. Is the NBS going to break this further down, or is this just going to remain as this document? If you want to get a hold of it, you do.
So we have for wide variety of users, we have a bigger one that we call Solving Findings Report, which have for researchers and all that, they can make use of that. We have this snapshot that you can quickly look at the result. We also have what we call fact sheet, where it's also been simplified module by module. For instance, this one is just talking about immunization coverage. All the things here are all about immunization. So this is already broken down. We also have this that summarize what you have even in the snapshot. We have taken them module by module, the issue of birth registration. So the issue of child marriage, the issue of violent discipline. So you can see that we have gone further to have specific results for each of the modules, so that people can just pick it and say, what is this one saying? And then you can quickly see the result. And then use the intervention, the programmers can see what they want to do. So each person can take his own relevant area and see what they can do with the result. So it has further been broken down.
All right, so there you have it. Media can do well to even take their own, that variety of users. Well, gentlemen, Mr. Semi Adeniran and Mr. Peter Hawkins, thank you both. Well done.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We will be back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, yes, as you've seen, the mascot, Bozokalo, joins us next. He is the governorship candidate for APP in Abia State. Thank you for coming on, and good morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Chamberlain. Thank you, Mohammed.
You know, just so many things just playing itself out in the country as it is now, from security to economy. We just talked about some data that people can use for development. And, you know, you just wonder, especially now that we're approaching general elections, there's so many items, issues that depending on, you know, what side of the divide that you're on, that will really stick out and people want to address. But for you, going into elections at this time, I just wonder, do you consider any because this time many will say is quite unique and a lot more challenges for those who are seeking political offices, what they will face. Are you faced by any of this? What makes you think, yes, I want to throw my hat into all of this, seeing what's going on?
Well, the problem is a problem that's been caused over the years, and it's one that requires people or individuals who have the skills to be able to handle governance. Government has passed the time where we use friends or well wishes to actually run government. We need people who understand the challenges that the country is facing and be able to bring policies that will tackle those challenges. And that's part of the problem that we have right now. We are not bringing policies to tackle problems, and we are not also looking at for the problems we have today, what problems they could create tomorrow. So we're not addressing the issues and we're not planning for tomorrow. That's the reason why we are where we are now.
What is your assessment of where we are now, the impression in terms of, are we at the point where you think we understand, or political leadership understand, that we actually need to get people who can do these things to come in, not just for the sake of politicking, as it were?
Well, we're still not there because you still have a lot of people who don't have a clue of what the problems they're going to be faced in governance, also want to aspire to be governors and want to be inspired to be in different positions. People think it's still the same day of grandizing, but we are faced with real problems within our nation. We need to be able to put in policies that will address the today problem and then start addressing the future. The problem is that all these years, we were not putting in policies to address the future. So everything has come in. The global economy has come in and everything is being faced, and Nigeria is suffering a lot from it. So we need to change that policy. We can no longer have friends and well-wishers occupy positions of authority.
Is this when you say we're not there, is it a function of followerships, docility, or those who occupy those positions just being dictatorial, not wanting to let their positions off, just holding on to whatever they have, no matter what it costs them?
I think it's having a lot of people who are clueless to what they need to do, being in position of authority. We're not planning. We don't have any blueprints as to what we want to do. There's nothing. So it's like we're faced with problems of today and we're trying to solve problems of today, and we're not planning for the problems of tomorrow. And the problems that we see today, we're not realizing if they're not corrected on time, what other problems they'll generate too. So we're not planning for the future, we're not planning for today. And that's the problem we're having.
Well, you are no stranger to politics. I'm sure most people who look at your name will be wondering, are you related to former governor of Abia State, who's currently a senator, Jules Okalu? And obviously you are, that's correct?
That's correct.
He's your elder brother, isn't he?
That's correct.
And I know that you also served with him when he was in office as governor.
No, I did not.
You didn't? You weren't his chief of staff?
I was chief of staff to Governor T.O.G.
Okay, interestingly. So you are no stranger to the system.
Yes.
And I think only recently you decamped from the All Progressives Congress.
That's correct.
So if that is the situation, the ideas which you currently hold, are they born out of your experience from what you have seen being so close to the corridors of power?
Well, both. I was a returnee. Governor T.O.G. returned me from the United States. I'm probably the youngest ever appointed chief of staff. I was barely about 30 years when he appointed me. I'm also would say I'm the only one who I can beat my chest that resigned, willing and ready to follow.
Mr. Ojikalu, the electorate has heard the same words over the years. I promise I'm going to bring change, and the getting there, it would seem like I didn't know things were this bad and all of that. So making promises may not be enough for the people. We've heard that over the years, and of course you are also aware of that. So in terms of making promises, it's one thing. Getting the promise done, that's another thing. There's some persuasion needed by the people to be assured that you, though not on one of the main political platforms, as my colleagues have pointed out to you, you have a more Herculean task.
Of course. By no means am I saying having the opportunity on a smaller party to run for governor is not a very hectic decision. It is one, but it's one that I'm prepared and I'm ready to do. I knew what the odds were before I chose it, and I'm very much prepared for the job. When you talk about confidence, like I said, the Abia people know me, and they know when I was there as chief of staff, there was no single request that they brought, either by demonstration, by letter, that it was something brought by the group, either through the union, that I did not make sure that the governor addressed. So at some level, they do have that confidence in me based on my past record. And based on that, I do not have any doubt that we will make a good governor.
All right, well, you know, looking at how all of this is playing out, you say you're very confident, no thanks to BVAS and the electoral system, which you, from what you've seen, you think that can give you some props. But looking at the way things are, in Osun State, for instance, in spite of the economy, 375,000 odd votes, people voted for the APC, even though they lost. So it still tells you that, well, if you think you understand the voters, you may not.
Well, each state is peculiar. The Osun governor may not have lost because he did not do so well as a governor. And remember, it's his re-election. It's not like you're bringing a new candidate. So in Abia...
So he had a lot more, he's supposed to have a lot more advantage.
Yes, but he may have been voted out because they had more, he didn't do as well as they wanted him to do. As the sitting governor, he will have a lot of followers. In Abia, it's different. We're all new to government. None of us have governed. So we have to now sell what our ideas or what we're going to do to the people. So it's going to be different from Osun.
Why am I asking? Is your brother in support of this? How is your brother taking your ambition?
Well, it's neither here or there. I'm allowed to forge ahead and do what I want to do.
Because I was going to ask him, politics, you people say it's a game of interest.
Yes.
It means he may or may not support you, or is blood going to be thicker than water here?
Well, we will see at that time. I am running to win, so I'm sure at some point, yeah, I will persuade him to support me. But we'll see what happens. Either way, there's no love lost, there's no anger, there's no quarrel in the family that I'm running on the different platform. Before I left the party, I made sure he understood my grievance, and I had a chance to speak with a lot of the top people in the party, and I told them, I don't have a problem with APC, but I just haven't been treated well. So I and my followers are going somewhere else to forge ahead.
But this technically sounds like an independent candidature, because
well,
you're a new party, relatively unknown in the States. You don't have all those, what they call them, structure.
Yes.
How do you plan to pull this?
No. I do have the structure.
Oh.
I have the structure. Within the state, as it stands today, we're about, actively in the state, about 120 days. We have over 10,000 members. We have over 10,000 members. We have all the political positions filled up with serious candidates. I have my 24 House of Assembly members running, serious candidates. So we do have the structure.
Well, even though you say that you're all new, but you've forgotten that the ruling party in the state has a candidate. So technically, you all
yeah, but the ruling party,
new.
The ruling party is going to be running based on the record of the soon-to-be predecessor. So that's the record we're going to be attaching to him. That's the record he's going to be running on, because that's the record he has to work on, and that's the record he has to promote from. So, and as long as Abians don't like that record, anybody else can become governor.
All right, you heard it. We'll see how that plays out. And the mascot, Ojo Zakalo, says he's a candidate with the most in Abia. Well, thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Mohamed.
I think we do have some comments, do we?
Indeed. The first one is from Henry Ewunono, and he is talking about interrogating the Mix and Nix report. He says the results were referendum on performance in governance, especially at the grassroots local government level. This level has the mandate of supervising basic education, primary health care, especially routine immunization and reproductive health, sanitation, markets that promote local economic growth, etc. This tier of government, despite all the pretenses, is near absent in most states, despite having officials and a huge wage bill. Kudos to states that have shown the difference, and shame to those who have continuously wasted the people's time. As more Nigerians become IDPs, conscious efforts must be made to extend care to the vulnerable populations, such as those in IDP camps. Very insightful.
Shooting from the hip this time. Wow. This one comes through from Dixon Eka, who's talking about the ASUU strike. He says, the continued ASUU strike is an embarrassment to the entire country. The ruling class don't feel the impact of the ASUU strike. The National Assembly should enact a law compelling education administrators to train their children in Nigerian universities. It's painful seeing governors, ministers, and others celebrating their children's graduation abroad at the time that Nigerian universities are under lock and key.
Yeah, under lock and key. The gates of the university are under lock and key, yeah.
Well, that proposition of the law from the National Assembly, you remember we tried it, what happened? Professor Imonaha Enahena says from this tweet, every sector of the economy will be affected amidst incoming power outage, which will be inimical to rebuilding the economy. With the already debilitating power sector, this strike is going to paralyze the economy, drive up cost of production, and affect the SMEs.
You know, for all we say about power, I mean, being epileptic, etc., we still do not want to just see a deliberate, a deliberate downing of tools. I mean, a deliberate action that, you know, downs the national grid. We manage what we have.
Yeah, we're actually differently when we hear that. That's what's about to cost the next one.
Yes,
so.
And you know the most annoying thing, when the power grid goes down, it takes a while for it to come back up. You can down it in how many hours, but for it to come back up, it could take at least two days, you know, for it to finally come back.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot. I do hope that, you know, what miracles will happen, because that's what the leader says, the Labour leader says, Mr. Joe Ajero says is going to take to happen. I believe miracles can happen, and I pray that it does happen for this strike not to happen today. But thank you so much for being a big part of our program today. Thank you for watching and for your meals. And Mao, where are we going, Yusuf?
I'm Chamberlain Oso.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your day.